Welcome to Mid-Century Living, your weekly nostalgia podcast about the best of technology and culture from the mid-20th century.
Welcome to episode 20 of Mid-Century Living, the show where we talk all about the best of the mid-20th century and how to add vintage vibes to your modern life. We're your hosts, Gonzalo.
And Jackie. Thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about drive-in theaters. But first, Gonzalo, how was your week?
Well, my week was good, but before I start on the week, can you believe we're on episode 20 already?
No, that actually seems pretty high.
Yeah, I know, right? So thank you guys for listening to us for 20 whole episode, or 19, I guess, as we go into 20th. But my week was good. It's just normal week.
Did you do anything for Valentine's Day?
No, I did not do anything for Valentine's Day.
Was there any, Valentine's shenanigans at school, I guess, with high schoolers?
Yes.
They don't make everyone give Valentines to everybody anymore, so, what do you do in high school now?
So what's really cool is that the choir, and I think we did this at our school too when we were in high school, but you can buy, songs for your, the students can buy songs free for, their significant others or their friends or
and
whatever.
Then the choir kids show up in the middle of math class to sing awkward, guitar music to people. I remember that now. They still do that?
They still do that, yes. So we had that going on throughout the school. And we got an option to, send in a no, don't come to my classroom note. But of course, I did not send that because let's interrupt the class.
I totally forgot about that.
Yes. But it's always fun. I mean, it wasn't fun when I was a student because I remember being sang to, and it was awkward.
You just get to sit in the corner, watch that kid be embarrassed, not have to teach for 4 minutes or however long that song is.
Yes.
I bet that's great. Yeah, I bet that's great outside of it. Yeah. I'm sure that choir kids are thrilled to be able to blow off an entire period to go sing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But also, it was a lot of fun. So, but anyway, how was your week? How was your Valentine's?
My week was good. My Valentine's was scaled down significantly, mainly due to user error. So, I think a couple episodes ago I was talking about all of my Valentine's food plans and Valentine's meal prep and all of this stuff I was thinking about doing, and I was just spending way too much time on Pinterest picking out stuff I wanted to try. And then my big spectacular this year was going to be, I was gonna do an actual vintage recipe of meringue heart bowls that you put ice cream in. And then I was gonna make little pink meringue heart cookies on the side so that I could make this whole big, anyways, but because I'm me and I just never try a recipe out as written first, I always try to add in my healthy substitutions first. And so I found out that you can indeed, in theory, now I don't think you can, and I need to write them a bad review, make sugar-free meringues by just substituting the regular sugar for a sugar-free substitute, as long as it's a 1-to-1 baking measuring, bakes like sugar substitute.
Stevia type things?
Yes, as long as, well, this, now I think it's wrong, but I've never made meringue before, so it could have been any of these following things that went wrong. Even though it said bakes and measures like sugar, the sugar never dissolved, so that sucks. Also, I never made meringue before, so I might have either undermixed, overmixed, or it might have been too humid. So it's another thing that possibly went wrong. And basically what happened is I thought I achieved stiff peaks, but maybe they weren't stiff enough peaks. Maybe they were over whipped peaks. Apparently you get to a point where you've whipped too much and then they just go backwards in time. But anyway, they looked beautiful and perfect, and I piped them into hearts and everything looked great. And then they went into the oven, and then I was going to go rotate the pans halfway through, and I noticed that they browned really, really fast, flattened in the oven, and were disgusting and horrible.
Oh no.
So I had to dump all of this out. And the thing about meringue is I don't mind, by the end of the day, all I wasted was 4 egg whites and, a cup of sugar. That's nothing. It wasn't, a big waste of food so much as it was, a huge waste of time because, you have to wait for the egg whites to come to room temperature for 30 minutes, and then you have to whip them until it achieves stiff peaks, which is at least 15 more minutes, and then you have to, fill up a pipe bag multiple times and pipe your little stupid hearts, and then like all of those things happened. Plus it was in the oven for 45 minutes before I could rotate the pan. So like that was my whole day. Not
Yeah.
really, but like it was like the better part of an afternoon just to find out that it was all a huge waste of time. So I was going to try again this weekend being now the weekend before Valentine's Day, but now it's raining and apparently you can't make meringues when it's humid.
Yeah.
So even if I wanted to give it another shot, I was actually planning on trying it again with real sugar to see if that would dissolve better and like stabilize the meringue a little bit better, and that maybe the problem was that I just picked the wrong sugar substitute. Now that I've now gone on to read 6 whole articles on like troubleshooting meringue, and like I was fully prepared to go try again this weekend, but now it's raining and my heart's not in it, so
I'm sorry it didn't work out.
so I think instead for like our special Valentine's Day dessert, I'm just gonna like, I have these little miniature heart jello molds. I was gonna like soften strawberry ice cream and then squish them in there and then like freeze them again so that I could like unmold them, and then I'll have like little heart-shaped ice cream pucks,
Oh, that's cool.
which like with
Ooh, you
whipped
should
cream
dip
could
them
be
in like dark chocolate.
Ooh, that is an extra layer. I might get fancy like that. Anyway, so I was just thinking that'll be like our personal dessert, but it's not going to be like an Instagrammable dessert. What I did manage to do was make all of my very cute Valentine's Day meal prep stuff, though, which, if it photographs well, might make it to Instagram. I guess by the time this episode comes out, we'll know if that is true or not, because I'll have either already done it or not. The thing is, like, I watch so many baking shows that by the time you're gotten through a whole season of the Great British Baking Show, you really think you can just jump in the kitchen and do these things, but you think you can do these things, but you can't, Nemo.
That happens to me if I watch like MasterChef or Hell's Kitchen or any Gordon Ramsay style kitchen show. I'm like, oh, I can totally make I don't know, duck confit with broccoli lava, and I can't.
That you probably could. That's the thing, is cooking is so much easier. Baking is hard.
Baking is chemistry, and I was not good at chemistry. You were good at chemistry.
Was I?
Yeah, you always understood the like balancing equation stuff. Do you not
I was
remember?
I remember being good at balancing equations, but we never got to like actually mess with chemicals. It was all theoretical. So that's the thing, is I'm theoretically good at baking. I think that actually translated one to one. But we didn't actually do anything with like flasks and goggles in our chemistry classes. We just did theoretical chemistry on paper. On paper, I've got this. I'm so disappointed in the sugar-free thing, though, because that would have just been a really nice high-protein snack. Like, it's just egg whites and sugar substitute. Like, that would have just been, like, little protein nuggets, like, and a totally guilt-free cookie. So, that was that.
So, let's just get on with the show.
Yes, let's do that. So, anyway, last week we talked about drive-thrus, so this week we're going to talk about drive-ins.
That's funny though. I love puns. So
yeah, good. Thank you. I was really happy that that pun might have been the inspiration for this entire episode. But so we'll start with the early history of drive-ins, the pre-World War II history. So there are actually several outdoor movie experiences attempted as early as 1915. But the drive-in theater we know today was patented in 1932 by someone named Richard M. Hollingshead Jr. He started by basically testing this in his driveway. He nailed a screen to the trees in his backyard, and he sat a Kodak projector on the hood of his car and put a radio behind the screen, basically testing different sound levels with his windows up and windows down and blocks under vehicles in the driveway so he could figure out the size and the spacing of the ramps. And once he figured it all out, he applied for his patent of invention on August 6th, 1932, and his application was approved in May 1933.
There's a patent for drive-ins?
There is. It is an actual patented concept. So after his patent was approved in May, he opened his first drive-in in New Jersey in June 1933, which offered 400 slots and a 40 by 50 foot screen. He advertised his drive-in theater with the slogan, "The whole family is welcome, regardless of how noisy the children are."
I love that.
So between 1934 and 1939, 19 more drive-in theaters opened across the country. The main problem at the early times was the sound issues. So the original Hollingshead Drive-In had speakers installed on the tower itself where the screen was, and that caused a sound delay for anyone sitting in the back or parked in the back. If they could even hear at all, there was a sound delay from the picture to the cars. So in 1935, someone in Los Angeles, the Pico Drive-In Theater, attempted to solve this problem with a row of speakers in front of the cars instead. And then the problem with that is that now it made the sound way louder and they were getting complaints from the neighbors. But finally in 1941, RCA introduced in-car speakers with individual volume controls, which solved the noise pollution issue and provided good sound to all patrons. And these speakers were put into production in 1946 and quickly became the industry standard. So, the main peak of drive-in popularity was in the 1940s through the 1960s. After World War II, when industries turned back to the manufacture of products here in America, there was a new car culture that took off, and that really helped. Also, the post-war baby boom meant that there were more families with more children who needed cheap forms of entertainment. Both of this led to a boom in drive-in theaters starting in 1945, with hundreds being opened each year. By the late 40s, drive-ins were actually more popular than indoor theaters. Between 1947 and 1951, the number of drive-ins increased from 155 to 4,151.
Whoa.
Which is one heck of a boom. During this time, actually, a lot of indoor theaters closed. They were more popular at this point.
I'm surprised, but also like you watch movies like Grease or any movie or TV show that's set in this time period, and they're always in drive-in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, it's impressive. But now that it's digested for a few seconds, I get it.
Yeah, that transitions nicely into the appeal of the drive-in movie. So basically, why it was so popular are all of these reasons. So one, it was a cheaper alternative to an indoor theater. One, because it saved the gas of driving out to the city and back home, because they didn't just have movie theaters everywhere back then. Like, you had to go all the way downtown to go to one. The cost of building and maintaining a drive-in was also cheaper than building and maintaining an indoor theater. Drive-ins were considered more informal than indoor theaters, which was appealing to people of all ages, but especially to families. Parents were able to bring their kids to the theater with them, including infants, without worrying about bothering other moviegoers, so couples could spend time together without paying for babysitters.
Yeah.
The increased popularity led to drive-ins offering concession stands, which was great for everybody. And to cater to the family demographics, drive-ins often had playgrounds, baby bottle warmers, and sometimes even laundry services on site.
What?
The thing is, they really wanted to entice people to bring their kids because families with kids tended to buy a lot of concessions.
No, I get that. But hey, I gotta go to laundry. You want to go to the drive-in?
I found this quote in one of the articles I read in researching this, which is wild. So I know most of us, I think, looking back, always picture everyone to be a little bit more prim and proper, and we talk about etiquette every week, but apparently these were just where people could really just let loose and be totally casual in public. So here's a quote. Drive-in customers were encouraged to treat their cars like a home from home. There was no need to dress up, and you were free to talk, smoke, and enjoy a bottle of beer during the show. Children were always welcome, however noisy and unruly. In any case, nearly all drive-ins provided a playground to help tire them out before the show began. Most kids had fallen asleep by the end of the film, leading to one early curious drive-in statistic that half of the moviegoers attended in their pajamas. And it does not specify just the children were in their pajamas.
I just imagine a bunch of like 1950s men and women in their pajamas.
Like, changing diapers in the back seat, drinking beer that they brought from home,
which you probably drink in the car.
Yeah, just drink in the car and watch your movie.
Yeah.
So it sounds fun but trashy.
I like that. Fun but trashy.
So some drive-in patron statistics during the 1950s. 19% of spectators were aged 12 to 20. 45% were 21 to 30, and 36% were over 30 years of age. 54% of cars contained families with children.
Ooh.
And drive-ins also reached a more diverse audience as they typically ignored Jim Crow laws, which is a very cool little note there.
Yeah.
Some additional gimmicks that drive-ins used to increase attendance / make more money. Sometimes they had drawings for prizes and free admission. Sometimes they had fireworks displays. Sometimes they had personal appearances by actors to open the movies or musical groups to play before the show. Some drive-ins even held Sunday religious services or charged a flat price per car on slow nights like Sundays or Wednesdays. And on bargain nights during the 50s and 60s, the admission price was usually $1 a car.
Oh wow. Which dollar in 1950s today would be about $10.50.
Oh.
Which is very reasonable for a movie, because going to the movies now, the tickets themselves, I think they're like around 15.
Yeah, and that's per person, not per car.
Yeah.
But because it was so cheap and formal and fun and for everybody, basically the teenagers took over. So by the 1960s, independent teenagers were quickly becoming the primary audience for drive-ins. Teenagers who had once gone to the drive-in as small children were now old enough to drive and pursue social lives away from their parents. So by the 40s and 50s, teenagers really started taking over the drive-ins. Most teenagers couldn't linger on the streets or have parties in their parents' houses, but they did have access to automobiles. Sneaking into drive-ins, this is something they did in Greece, was another popular
I've done
teenage
this too.
activity. What, where you hide in the trunk?
Uh-huh.
Really?
Yeah, I'll talk about it later.
I didn't know people still did that, but yeah, so they would hide in the trunk until the car was parked, and then everyone would get out of the trunk. So at this point, drive-ins were getting so full of partying teenagers that they got a new nickname, Passion Pits. There was an unofficial seating chart. Basically, families parked their cars in the front rows, dating teens sat in the middle rows, and then the party was in the back. So people who parked in the back would drink and have sex and smoke weed in the 60s in all the back rows of the drive-in. Fun but tacky, it's what I was saying. So the people having sex in drive-ins was actually so prevalent that Life magazine actually noted that one of the benefits of attending the drive-in theater rather than indoor theaters is that you're not distracted by the lovemakers behind you, and you can do your own lovemaking in privacy. So it achieved full tackiness at this point. So after they've officially gotten very tacky, they actually, well, I said that they achieved peak tackiness in the 60s with all of the Passion Pit happenings, but they actually got worse, if you can believe it. So now we're getting into the decline of the drive-in theater. The business itself started to stagnate in the 60s and began its decline in the 70s. Some for multiple reasons, but some of them are that they relied too heavily on good weather. Bad weather usually resulted in poor attendance or cancellations. Land prices were increasing and drive-ins took up a lot of space. By this time, most of the original drive-ins were also in need of capital improvements, but since sales were down, many owners chose not to invest in this. The film industry also started charging higher rental fees and required longer runs, which made it really difficult to compete with multiplex indoor cinemas. So because of this, drive-ins tended to only show B movies or second or third run movies. From the 60s through the 80s, the drive-in audience changed, and so did the movies. One study from 1976 examined movies showing at a Midwestern drive-in during the summer and found that the films were predominantly softcore porn or hot car movies, quote unquote. So, not surprisingly, many drive-ins then developed a reputation for being seedy, which made them unattractive to many potential theatergoers, especially families, who used to be their primary audience.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a little sad, because they were all about the family in the very beginning, and this great resource for families to go and have a night out, not have to worry about babysitters, not have to worry about their kids being noisy and bothering other people.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden, families are like, nope.
Too gross to go there.
Yep.
Some other things, of course, contributed to decline. Improvements and changes to home entertainment, like color television. Some people just didn't feel the need to leave the house. There was an energy crisis in the 70s where the government encouraged lower use of automobiles, so that made things worse. And this crisis in particular is actually the reason for adopting the daylight savings time, which actually caused drive-in movies to start an hour later, which also alienated some audiences. And then, of course, in the 80s and 90s, we get VCRs, video rental, cable television, DVDs, and people were just more likely to enjoy movies in the comfort of their own homes. By the late 80s, the total number of drive-ins still operating in the United States and Canada fell to less than 200.
Whoa.
Most surviving drive-ins operated solely on weekends. Some were only open during the spring and summer months. Most of the land was sold to build residences as cities spread out into the rural areas, and in extremely rural areas, most abandoned drive-in movie sites are just repurposed as storage or flea market sites.
Interesting. I know of one that I used to drive by often out in middle of nowhere, East Texas. 'Cause I used to have to drive there every week for work, and it's right off the highway. And you drive by, and all you see is the back of the screen, and then a sign in really cool like 1950s, 60s like font and like painting style, and it's like the blah 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 drive-in theater. But you can see like the screen is like all rusted and like broken down, and like the back where I guess the concession building would have been is just like all decrepit. It
Oh.
looks pretty cool, especially if you like post-apocalyptic video games. And it actually that's so, and I say that because I know we're getting off topic, but any of the listeners who like to play Fallout, the video game, one of the spots in that game is an old drive-in theater, and since that video game is a 1950s future, it's actually really cool looking. So
Yep, I never
that's it.
played any of those games, but that does sound cool. It's a
It
shame.
is.
I always feel bad when they just, I don't know. Like, would I rather them tear it down and put something else there, or leave it there rotting for everyone to stare at and be sad? Like, I'm not really sure which I like better.
Yeah, I know it's a very fine line, and I don't know where I stand.
Getting from the 80s to today, basically drive-in popularity has just been up and down ever since. So the one good thing-ish about the scarcity of drive-in theaters means that any drive-ins still operating are really considered more of a novelty and appeal to nostalgic types like us. Um, this was enough to give drive-ins a little revival in the late 90s, actually, and by 2006, around 500 drive-in theaters were open in the United States, which was the highest number since the mid-70s. About 400 of those were regularly operating venues, and then the last 100 were summertime seasonal theaters. But then, in the second half of the 2000s, drive-ins had another decline thanks to the industry switch to digital projection. The industry basically switched to that because movie studios could save on distribution costs by delivering movies wirelessly in digital format to theaters, which means basically if a drive-in elects not to go digital, they will no longer have access to new films.
Oh,
And the conversion to an all digital format requires new projectors, which could cost anywhere from $60,000 to $150,000 per screen. So if they're barely keeping float anyway, that basically is now they're stuck with those B movies. And again, there have been several initiatives to attempt to save the drive-ins by helping out with the digital conversion. In 2013, Honda actually created something called Project Drive-In, where they allowed supporters to vote for their favorite drive-in theaters to win digital projectors, and they received over 2 million votes. They had only originally intended to donate 5 projectors, but because it was so popular, they expanded the campaign and gave away 10. And some drive-in theaters are doing their own crowdfunding campaigns to try to get new projection equipment. By 2018, they went back down again, and less than 300 drive-in theaters were reported to operate worldwide.
oh,
With only a handful outside of North America. There was, however, one more brief resurgence in 2020 through 2022 thanks to COVID, because unlike indoor theaters, because of the bans on mass gatherings, people were actually able to go to drive-ins because people were automatically separated from each other by their cars.
that makes total sense. I mean, yeah, we couldn't during COVID like be places and enjoy things, but if you're in your car and you're with the people you already live with at your house,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, yeah, go watch a movie and be outside of the house for the first time in 143 days.
Yeah. In 2021, actually, drive-in theaters in North America accounted for 85 to 95% of the box office revenue,
Wow.
according to CNN. And that's the history of drive-in theaters to today.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Have you ever been to a drive-in theater?
No, but I drive by one every time I drive to Houston from here, but it's about 45 minutes from my house.
It's a trek.
it's a bit of a trek. I do know, because I look at it every time I drive by it, that all of the shows are double features, which is kind of neat.
Hmm.
But then that means I am driving 45 minutes and I'm stuck there for 5 hours worth of movie, and then I have to drive 45 minutes to get back, and like that's really the barrier to entry for me. But I love the idea of it, especially if I feel like that would be great in a truck, like where you just park
Yes.
backwards and like recline.
So that's yes.
So have you been?
Oh yeah, a lot.
A lot.
Um, yeah, there's a drive-in theater about 20 minutes from my house,
Oh, cool.
and it's really cool. And we used to go. I haven't been in a few years, but we used to go just like you say in a pickup truck. Um, well, okay, let me rephrase. I've been in cars and in pickup trucks. Here's my view on both. The pickup truck, just like you say, you back it up to the spot, and then you can put like a blow up mattress in the back or just like pillows and stuff to make it comfortable. And then, yeah, you watch the movie and it's fun. And then I've been on like in cars where you can hide people, and then sneak them in. So it costs $10 a person. When I was last time I went, it was 5. But you get 2 or 3 people so that it looks like you have a group, right? To pay, and then you sneak the other ones in the back. We used to go in like a minivan, or a car that has like a big trunk where it's not like against the Geneva Convention to stuff people in there.
Oh, so like a hatchback or something where they're not like actually suffocating in the back.
Yeah, exactly. And then you split the cost.
So you just hide under blankets in the back?
Yeah, you kind of got to make it look like real. You can't, because if not, the people at the check-in booth are gonna be like, "Oh, what's under the blanket?" You're gonna have to, be a little sneakier about it. But I have done both, and this drive-in theater has 2 screens, and each screen's a double feature, and you're allowed to move your car after the first movie ends. So you pay the money, and you like, okay, I'm gonna go watch, I don't know, the first movie in the first screen, and then when that movie ends, you can either choose to stay for the double feature there, or go to watch the second film in the second screen.
Cool.
Yeah, and they do have concessions and all that stuff, and you're not supposed to bring outside food,
Really?
but yeah, you're not encouraged to. Well, actually, I would say you're not supposed to.
Oh, okay. Like if you showed
Uh,
up with a cooler, would they tell you can't bring it in?
yeah, per
Oh.
the rules, they're like you're not supposed to. And what's really cool about this one is that there's no okay. So you talked about how the speakers were part like they were like personal for each car
Hmm.
with like volume control and stuff. This movie theater, the way they do it is they have a FM tuner, so they broadcast the film on whatever radio station they have there. So you tune your radio. So they have a how to enjoy the drive-in section on their website, and what they say is, the first thing is, no idling your car. So you don't want to make noise. You turn the car off.
Hmm.
Then it says bring folding chairs to enjoy watching the movie from outside your vehicle. The majority bring out chairs. Some go as far as bringing out couches. But then the real important thing to do, and this is how I've done it, is bring a battery powered radio.
Mm.
Because what this does is it helps in both the event your vehicle cannot pick up the FM broadcast, but also if you want to sit outside, you don't have to worry about it. And to me, it's got the added benefit that you're not running your
Your
battery.
battery. Yeah, I was just going to ask. I'm glad you
Yeah.
covered that, because I don't want to leave my battery running for 2 whole movies.
So that's why we've done it. And especially if you have a pickup truck, it makes sense because, the radio's inside the car, you're outside the car.
Cool.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. And this drive-in, I keep calling them movie theaters, but they're drive-ins. This drive-in will play rain or shine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they say that in event of weather being too dangerous, they will cancel the shows, and they'll post the cancelings within 3 hours of the starting time. And on their website now, it does say 7 p.m. starting time. When we were in high school, I remember going, and at that time they had like the starting show like on their site. It said movies start at dusk.
So that was just whenever the sun set, so it would change.
Yeah, whenever the sun sets, the movie started. And back then there was only one screen.
Well, I'm glad that they even just since we were in high school, they've expanded to 2 screens. So
Yeah,
they're doing well then. That's good.
yeah.
Well, that's exciting. Yeah, it's been on my list for a while. When I was doing this research about how gross they were in the 60s and 70s, then I was like, oh, maybe never
I
mind.
mean,
But
I have played the which car is, doing stuff because
do
it's
they still
very
park in the back like they used to, or does that?
I didn't know that was a rule, but I will say that it's very easy to tell who's doing what in the car because, for one thing, the cars shake. Okay, but also sometimes you accidentally hit the brake light, the brake pedal. So if you like, sometimes the lights flash, and yes, that like
Now
they're doing
everyone in
that
the theater knows which.
exactly. But then also, I remember this vividly once. I was walking to the concession stand to beat the crowd, and as I'm doing that, this like it was a brown van type vehicle because the guy opens the back door, gets out, buttoning up his pants as he's getting out of the car.
Jeez.
So,
Okay, so they're still
but
tacky.
okay, maybe that a little tacky, but it's still really cool because what you mentioned about the drive-ins having playground equipment for the families is 100% true because underneath the screen at this place they have playground equipment, and I think it's really cool because that way you can have your kids go. It's like go play, but you're still kind of being able to like keep an eye on them because you're looking at the screen and the playground equipment's right below it.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
So like the whole theater can look at your kids too, so they're not gonna like run off.
Yeah, it's kind of like, and this place is fenced in, but still, it's still a fairly large space,
That is
and
really
they
cool.
have really cool like cartoon snacks videos to like promote the concessions at the very beginning.
Oh, I remember that the little cartoon hot dog.
Yeah, it's all real. That happens.
So I guess now that we're caught up to the present, it is time for our etiquette segment. So Gonzalo, what do we have today?
Okay, so we once again delve into the pages of Amy Vanderbilt's Complete Guide to Etiquette from 1957. And since we just, by the time that we release this episode, have just celebrated Valentine's Day, I thought it'd be kind of cool to have some tips from Amy Vanderbilt on what she calls the quote masculine graces.
Fun.
Yes, we know her as the great writer um, because she always has these really cool quotes. And here's another one. So regarding sending flowers, that's what this is about. Quote, a man who is laying siege to a girl's heart does well not to systemize his flower sending. End quote. And what she has to write about sending flowers is that too many men are confused and, quote, use little or no sense in the sending of flowers, end quote. And what she means by this is that men will buy something expensive and they then believe that it's impressive, but they take no thought into the flower being appropriate for whatever the lady is wearing. So, for example, or where they're going. So, for example, a corsage of purple orchids may look cool, but maybe inappropriate for a football game. That was what she wrote.
So true.
According to Vanderbilt, a lady is much more impressed if her escort makes an effort to find out what flowers she would prefer.
Yeah.
More on the masculine graces regarding lateness. If one is meeting a lady at an appointed place, lateness of 5 to 10 minutes is acceptable, but it's always better manners to be there slightly before your guest's arrival. Greater lateness than this can be acutely embarrassing to a lady, and if some emergency has arisen, an explanatory message should be sent if possible.
Cool.
Which, yeah, makes sense. I'm all for that, and not just on a date, but like as a general rule, you should be there early.
I'm shocked that she's allowing up to 10 minutes of lateness.
I know, especially for a date.
Mm-hmm.
There was a really cool bit also in this section about hand kissing. And she says that in the USA, hand kissing is an intimate rather than social custom.
True.
And the proper way of doing it is for a man to take a lady's fingers lightly in his, bow slightly over the hand, not lift it to his level, and touch his lips to the back of it, not really implant a kiss. It is a great breach of etiquette to kiss the palm of the hand, which I thought was funny. But also, I thought it was funny how it says the proper way is to not lift the hand, because the only time I can think of having seen this in movies is in Titanic, and Jack raises Rose's hand. It's when she's for dinner scene and they're going down the grand
Yeah,
staircase.
I need to go back and watch I've always felt like in my brain it was some sort of combination, but they do always bow slightly.
Yeah. So what do you think about these masculine graces? Do you think they're acceptable norms for men on dates?
I do. I think that people, especially on dates, should be as polite as possible. What I like about the flower sending etiquette is where she says that men will buy something expensive and therefore think it is impressive without putting any actual thought to the context of the flowers.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that she has a whole paragraph because I have never sent flowers, so I don't know this sort of thing. But I would imagine that would be very stressful, and it would be nice for men possibly to have a little rule book to go back to and be like, okay, I didn't get a chance to ask her what flowers she likes, but I really want to send her some. What's a good like basic flower package where you don't know what
Yeah.
their favorites are? Like I love that she like covered all of that.
Yes.
I'm a little on the fence about the 10 minutes of lateness.
You should be on time for a date. But also, this book is from 1957, where there was no way to let your date know that you're running late.
Oh, that's true. Good point.
So,
So
because like
like
right now, you
it
could be
could be
like,
like accounting for traffic, like don't freak out until they've been more than 10 minutes late.
exactly. Because like right now, you can text someone and be like, oh, sorry, I'm, at XYC intersection. I'm 10 minutes away. It still does not excuse lateness. Like you should still be on time, especially for like a first date. It does not excuse it, but I think it's okay if you send a message because then you're explaining yourself. You're not just showing up late and therefore being inconsiderate of someone else's time.
Yeah. And in that if everyone knows that like to allow 5 to 10 minutes for traffic or something coming up, that also gives the lady something to not worry about, like so she's not freaking out at the dinner table
Right.
because he's 5 minutes late because like everyone's just allowing 5 to 10 minutes for like general things coming up. So
Correct.
yeah, I'm fine with all of these tips.
Okay. I like them too. And as a man, I think we should abide by these. And now I know how to send flowers.
Yeah, I love that.
So I'll go ahead and I think we should give it the stamp of approval.
Approved.
So it looks like we have landed the plane. Thank you guys all for listening today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the show and tell a friend.
You can also follow us on Instagram at MCL Podcast. This is the best place to send us feedback and episode suggestions or comments or anything. Just send us a DM anytime.
Thanks for listening, guys. We'll talk to you again next week.
Bye!
Thank you for listening to Mid-Century Living. Please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave a review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at MCL Podcast. See you next Friday.